I am on faculty here in the Faculty of Forestry. I'm in the Department of Wood Science, which puts me in a little bit of a different sphere from most of you. I spent most of my career working for a research and development institute that some of you may well know, which is FP Innovations. And this project actually came out of a joint appointment that I had between FP Innovations and the Faculty of Forestry called Opening Doors. I did this about 6 years ago. The kind of the motive that came out of this project was at FP Innovations at the time, we still have it now, they still have it now. There was quite a substantial capacity building program for Aboriginal communities. And most of that capacity building was being looked at from a forestry point of view. So things like putting in logging roads and maybe very rudimentary wood processing like sawmilling. But there was really nothing that got into more of the value added side and took advantage of what I thought is one of the probably more interesting parts of Aboriginal capacity building, which is along the lines of their traditional art. So this is a little bit of a story of my process of doing that. And I'm going to start with this slide for a couple of reasons. One, it's a photograph of Susan Point's piece at the Vancouver airport that I'm sure you all recognize. I like to have this in particular as a starting point, as it gives me a chance to recognize that we are on the unceded territory here at UBC of the Musqueam people, and which of course Susan Point is representing. But I also put this slide up as a way to really start to get at my motive for wanting to do this. We have all sorts of examples of beautiful art being done by Aboriginal artists like Susan, in this case in Western Red Cedar, to be true to this conference. But we don't have a lot of examples of how this art has really gone back to benefit the community. So to really be used in a capacity building sense. So this has made Susan very, very famous as a Musqueam artist, but more to the point, it's made her famous as a person. It's not clear how the Musqueam people have benefited from the work that she's done in all cases. We have other examples of that. This is also Vancouver Airport. This is by one of my favorite artists, Dempsey Bob. This happens to be a hybrid between yellow and red cedar, laminated. You probably also recognize this from Vancouver Airport. I like showing this or talking about this because Dempsey, unlike most artists of his caliber that I know, really has thought long and hard about how he can use his art in a way to give back to his community and communities generally. Dempsey is a founding instructor at the Frida Deasing School of Northwest Coastal Art up in Terrace. So he spends a lot of time working with students, working with next generation artists, and he really spends a lot of his fortunes, if you like, in giving back to the community in this way. He's probably one of the best known Aboriginal artists, which makes him one of the most highly paid Aboriginal artists. And I've been to his home up in Terrace, and I can tell you it's very modest. So this is a gentleman that definitely gives back to not only his own community, but communities all over Canada for that matter. Dempsey, I also use as a motivation for this project in that by talking to him, and that was his motive for being at the Frida Deasing School of Art of Northwest Coast Art. He is worried that a lot of this art is in danger of being somewhat lost, that artists, young people are not as much flocking into art as the way they used to. And that if we're not careful, a lot of these talents or a lot of these histories in this side of art is going to get lost. And that got me very, very interested in learning how we could maybe work in the concept, or sorry, as someone representing FP Innovations and representing wood science at UBC, how we could work in facilitating this sort of capacity building program or concept. So I came up with this idea excuse me, called Opening Doors, where I wanted to look at a way of doing something in the neighborhood of functional art, something that we could maybe use technology to help artists such as Dempsey and Susan and their next generation proteges in facilitating that concept of commercialization, but in a very respectful way. The problem often with Aboriginal art is that the designs and the ideas get knocked off by those that just want to do relatively inexpensive reproductions and not give the artist full credit for what they're doing. So I had this notion of doing something very different, where we looked at the idea of using technology to do the same sort of thing as we do with limited edition prints with graphic artists. So that's the story I'm going to tell right now in the next 15 minutes or so. You can see that I very much took a partnership approach. I not only worked with Dempsey and Company at the Freda Deasing School, which is represented here at the bottom icon. I also worked with Emily Carr, University of Art and Design. And of course, there was also a partnership with myself representing both UBC and FP Innovations. The point of working with Emily Carr and the Northwest Community College, which is now called the Coast Mountain College, which is where Freda Deasing School is located, will become apparent in a minute. So I wanted this from start to finish to be very much about Aboriginal capacity building, about Aboriginal branding, about Aboriginal well-being. So I wanted this to be as much in the supply chain as possible using Aboriginal ownership. So the wood that we used in this project, at least for the red cedar side, we harvested from the Newhawk Nation lands near Bella Coola. We actually processed the wood at their own lumber mills and their kilns to produce the red cedar lumber, which we could basically use as the input to produce what I would call the canvases for what we worked with. So these are the blanks that we used for carving. In this case, these are all Western red cedar. The frame around the outside is Douglas fir. That's just temporary to keep the whole canvas, if you like, dimensionally stable. These panels were glued up professionally and planed professionally by a door manufacturer, because I wanted this to be as real as a business case as possible. This is not something that any existing Indigenous community, at least that I know about in Canada, can do at the moment. That they would have this sort of processing capacity to have both the not only what we saw before in terms of the sawmilling and the kilns, but also the presses, the ability to glue these up in a very dimensionally stable way, and to make these a furniture grade, furniture quality. So it did take a partnership working with a door company here in the Lower Mainland, but the idea would be that eventually this is the sort of activity that could be taken over by an Aboriginal community, that they would be developing their own gluing expertise and their gluing facilities. So what I did with these canvases then is I invited young carvers from up and down the BC coast, representing 10 different communities, 10 different artists. These were young artists that wanted to become better artists, completely funded on so it was no cost to them. We brought them either to Emily Carr University here in Vancouver or up to the Freda Deasing School up in Terrace. We did half and half. All the ones that came to Emily Carr here in Vancouver, we worked with red cedar. And just to make it interesting, all the ones that went up to Terrace, we used yellow cedar. So we invited them to come for a month to work under selected master carvers. Here in Emily Carr, we worked with a Salish, Coast Salish Squamish master carver, Holacton Harry. And up north, we worked with Dempsey and his colleagues. So this is just some shots of what happened over that month, the carving process. And you can see just the amazing, I think I would call it quality and combination of both traditional and modern art designs because these were younger artists. That's Acton there as on the left as the instructor, and one of the students on the right. This is showing Acton's own door. He did one at the same time. Again, red cedar. This is actually Acton's son on the right, James Harry. So it showed the multi-generational aspect of this, which I liked very much. And some of the other doors that were done at the same time. So in the end, these door panels would be installed into a finished door like what you're seeing here. So they're floating panels. These were designed to be indoor, for indoor applications, just so they'd be more dimensionally stable and not so worried about having to do finishes that would be suitable for sun and moisture decay or degradation. But we could have just as well done these for outdoor use as well. Here are two examples of the yellow cedar doors that were done with our group up in Freda Deasing. So just to give you an idea of what these can sell for, that door on the right, which was done by Latham Mack, that sold at a art gallery for, I believe, over $35,000. So you can see just how well how far this can go in an economic sense when it comes to capacity building. There's our shot of 5 of the doors, just kind of a range of different styles, again, representing 5 different artists. Now, this is where we brought in the UBC Faculty of Forestry Center for Advanced Wood Processing piece. What I wanted to do here with take those doors that I just showed you and figure out, as I say, a way to use technology respectfully to do this kind of limited edition print idea. So we started by scanning these doors. This is already a kind of an old technology by today's standards, because this was 6 years ago. This is a fellow that actually works more for the film industry. They scan people for movies like Superman or what have you, so they can animate those people to fly or do whatever they want. Same concept though, we scanned the panels. So we were then able to convert those AutoCAD images into a language that can be read by a CNC router, computer numeric control router, such as the one that we have here at the Center for Advanced Wood Processing. And with that, we would do, blanks, if you like. So kind of that a carve out reproduction with the idea that they would do a limited edition print, something like, 1 of 5, 2 of 5, 3 of 5, or so on. We could have gone 2 ways with this. One is we could have used that technology to actually do a finished reproduction. But that's exactly what I did not want to do. A, it makes it so expensive that it takes away the point of doing a limited edition reproduction like this. B, I wanted rather to do a rough out reproduction that then the artist goes back and finishes. So even though it's a limited edition reproduction, it's still in very much in a way an original, because it is hand finished by the artist or hand finished by one of the artist's apprentices. And that's what ended up happening, and why this ended up being such a very interesting tool for a way of bringing in the next generation carver. Just to give you an idea of the time saving with this for the artists, the original doors that you saw before, they took on average, I want to say 6 to 8 weeks to do the carving. It was a 1-month carving course, and then they took the carving home, or the door panel home, and finished it. Like I say, on average, it took them 6 to 8 weeks to do the carving. With the limited edition rough out using the CNC technology, that time could be brought down by as much as 1 week to 2 weeks. So a very considerable time savings on the part of the artist, without getting rid of what I think is the most interesting part, which is the actual art itself. That we're not using the technology to do the reproduction, we're using the technology to make the first part of that process a lot simpler for the artists, much like we did with other types of technology along the way. If we think back at the technology used 200 years ago, 300 years ago for producing Aboriginal art. They didn't even have steel chisels yet. They were using stone and other natural materials that they could sharpen enough to do the carving. So that move to a chisel at the time was probably considered a big breakthrough in technology that maybe wasn't even going to be respectful for the art. Well, of course it was. And I'm suggesting here that if we do it right, this idea of using CNC technology is nothing more than an additional tool like a chisel, as long as it's treated respectfully. And that's what we very much try to do. So from here, now we're getting into the capacity building. So we did the initial carving. We got them, I gave them the blanks from the CNC machine, all free of charge as part of the pilot process. We then, these were all the lists of the artists. We then brought them to Vancouver, those that could make it, to an exhibition at the Roundhouse in Yaletown, where we invited art gallery owners, et cetera, from not only here in Vancouver, but from across the country, even some international, to do a meet and greet between the artists and the gallery owners. The whole point of this project was to bring these young artists to the forefront and how they might use this, this new technology to help create their own little business ideas or their own business ventures. This is a door that you might even recognize. I'll show you another shot in a moment. You'll notice if you're in the Faculty of Forestry building, you'll recognize it as the door going into the Dean's office. This is Arlene Ness, the artist. On the panel on the right, you can really see the process from start to finish. The panel on the left is her original. The panel on the right, at the very right, is the door blank. The gray in the middle is the CNC image, which is then through CAD technology used to create that panel that you see on the left, and that's the rough out. If I were to blow that up a lot, you would see that that panel on the left, the right picture, but on the left, is very, very fuzzy. So even though the CNC did that rough out, it used a very large bit. We were able to do this quickly, inexpensively, and it still took Arlene weeks to go in there with her chisels to clean up those lines and to create it to the same level as the original that you're seeing on the left. There's the door as you see it at the Dean's office. This is the original. Was very happy that I was able to have the Dean's office buy this. So I can credit John Innes for that purchase. This is Arlene standing next to one of her reproduction doors as it stands now at the Emily Carr School of Art and Design. So you can see this is now the rough out that's been completely finished by her. And you can see just what a high quality it is and what that advantage might be in terms of, again, capacity building and sales. So that original Arlene, again, would sell for, we got a rather good price because of the situation, but normally Arlene would have sold that for easily $30,000 because of her name. A reproduction like this, based on the time savings, she could probably lower that price to something more like $5,000 or $6,000, which gets it very interesting. I myself would never be able to afford to spend $30,000 on a door, but $5,000 or $6,000, that's getting to be more of an interesting price point. So that's the whole idea of limited edition, is that you're opening up your art to a wider audience. It's a win-win. More people are able to buy your art, and for yourself, you're able to sell much more and actually increase your own income. And as I mentioned, the added bonus of also using this as a way to train the next generation. I just want to now very quickly run through, because our time is a little short, run through where we went with this afterwards. We did separate exhibitions at the Wooden Innovation and Design Center up in Prince George. I actually took Dempsey to a UN event over in Switzerland, where we did a special exhibition around the project. Amazing what a successful reception that Dempsey had for this project over there. It shows that we're hitting a sweet spot, not only for here in British Columbia, but really international. I had people that were representing Sami First Nations from Northern Europe come and talk to us, wanting to do the same sort of thing. I've worked with Maori artists. We're hitting a chord here that I think has really international appeal for that interchange between forestry, wood products, and First Nations. This was us at BC Tech Summit, which we did for several years in a row. This was us at the BC Wood Global Buyers Mission. This was us at, by invitation to the BC Parliament buildings. This was us by invitation to go to the Builder Show at Builders Architect Show in Munich, Germany. And I took selective artists also to the Japan Home Show. All of these meant to basically get these artists out in front of a global market, a global audience, and really help to get them going on their business proposition. Last two slides I want to show is we ended up getting amazingly good media coverage on this, which again was so beneficial for the artists. UBC Media started the ball rolling. Once this got out, it was picked up by the Globe and Mail, by newspapers really across Canada, which was wonderful. CTV National News picked it up. There's a link there that could show you the 40-second clip that was on the CTV News. Again, all of which was so good at bringing out the awareness of BC First Nations art in a broader stage. Last slide to show you there is that we actually even got the attention of the Governor General, who wanted to do a private visit with the artists. It was fascinating to watch, actually. He was only going to stop by for 10 minutes with his RCMP entourage, et cetera, on his way to another event for one of his award ceremony events. He ended up staying 2 hours because he was so fascinated by the artists and chatting with the artists. So it just, again, shows what traction an idea like this can have. And finally, this would be what I would consider the next generation of what we're working on. This is our KUKA robot here at the Center for Advanced Wood Processing. And we're already working on next generation of utilizing, again, technology very respectfully. We've already done a couple of totems, one with a very noted Haida carver. With this technology, we can do much more three-dimensional pieces than we could with the CNC. And I think, Cindy, that's my time.